Is that the one where half of them have the toast with the butter side up and then the others with the butter side down? Like,
yes.
Who does that?
Starbelly Sneeches.
Fair enough.
God. Well, this morning we have a very special guest on the 54665 podcast, the podcast that brings you all things rural economic development, all things small business, and all things Viroqua. Today we have with us Jaali, right? Jaali. I just want to make sure I'm getting all the A's in there because it could be like, I don't know, Jaali. I didn't want to screw it up, you know?
No, I mean, it's Jolly.
Jolly. Like, it's pronounced like Jolly.
Yeah.
Like Jolly Bob's, Jolly Good Soda.
Sure.
Sure. Okay, good.
I was just talking about all the nicknames that I have.
Really?
Yep.
Well, what are some of the nicknames?
Let's see. We've got Jolly Rancher.
Oh, that's a good one.
Jolly Bean.
Jolly Bean.
Someone just calls me Jaali. It's like all the different pronunciations.
That's a very Viroqua thing to do. Like, I'm going to say your name just a little different because I am just a little different.
Exactly.
Yeah. We know.
So good.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Jaali.
Well, it all started on the day I was born.
Yes. Yes. I've been waiting for one of these my whole podcasting career. Go ahead, please. So you were born.
Yes, I was born. I lived in Chicago for the first 10 years of my life. And then I moved to a wonderful little town called Viroqua. And that's when my art career, I guess you could say, really took off. I started needle felting back in Chicago when I was 9. And I thought it was the coolest thing. But for a 9-year-old, making something for 2 hours and then not having it turn out exactly how you want doesn't, make me want to continue it that much. But then moving up here, and I saw that needle felting was more of a thing, I was like, okay, let's give this another shot. Sure. So I pretty much I went to Utopia, bought some supplies, and that was the start of my felting career, and I just kept at it.
What's the first thing that you felted?
A duck. It was a pink duck because I went to like a food expo with my family, and there was a woman who had like vegetable dyed wool, and she was doing a demonstration on how to make a duck. So awesome. I was like, I would like to learn how to make this duck. Please show me.
And pink, just because you had never seen a pink duck before, or like? Yeah,
that was pretty much the start of all of the fantastical colors of all of the dolls that I make.
Nice. That's amazing.
So for listeners who aren't necessarily as well versed, like what is needle felting?
Needle felting is, well, this question, I always have such a hard time describing or talking about it. You have this very special needle with these little barbs on the end. And by poking at a ball of wool roving or just some wool roving, it felts the fibers together and shapes it into whatever you desire. I can't really describe it better than that.
I think that's a perfect description.
Yeah. So is it like yarn sculpture? I mean, like, is it sculpture with fiber?
Soft sculpture.
Soft sculpture. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you can do like flat things.
Okay.
You can do designs on like wool socks or a wool sweater or something like that.
Sure.
But I never was into really the flat work. I was always like, I want to make animals
and
dolls.
Right. So like that kid from lacrosse who's like the world champion crocheter or whatever.
And he just got a book deal.
I know.
Nice.
I
He's
saw
so amazing.
that.
He is such a sweetheart.
Is he really? I haven't seen.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of the press about it, but I just like every time you go and read the news, you're like, wow, this kid is blowing up. He's like 11. Is that right?
Yeah. He's 11.
And he's one of the best crocheters in the world. So another yarn fabric artist, right? Like, and that's what kind of the impetus here, And I think that there's a lot of questions that kind of. I guess, so you have Jaali's Dollies.
Yes.
Right? And that was part of the pop-up shop program.
Yes.
What year was that you...
2016.
2016?
It was the day after I got back from Minneapolis.
Okay.
Well, and let's talk about that. I think that's a really important piece to this puzzle is you graduate from high school in Viroqua, you leave to go to school, and then what happens?
Well, so I graduated in 2015, and I knew I wasn't going to go to college right away because I just wanted to take a break from school.
Yep.
And I got pretty much my first job. I worked at the co-op for a while. And then fall of 2016, I was all set to go to Minneapolis to art school. And I did go for 2 weeks, and I didn't like it. So I came back, but after I knew I was going to come back, I was worried that I wouldn't have something to do, or I'd be back and just doing nothing with my life. And then I'd feel really bad. But it was during this process of figuring out that I didn't want to stay that my parents were talking, and they were like, hey, that little red shop is open. There's going to be this program. And if you decide to come back, maybe we can make that happen. And I was so excited because I've always loved the little red shop.
Yeah.
And so the day after I got back from Minneapolis, my dad and I went to the bank, opened my business checking account, just started the whole process for the pop-up shop, because ever since that little red shop became vacant, I would always joke, that's going to be my shop one day. And so just the fact that it happened was really incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, oh man, there's so many things, so many places I want to go with this.
Well, Jaali is such an incredible entrepreneur, being a young
What was
person.
that? She's
entrepreneur.
a...
Stop. Being a young person and an artist. I think how old are you, Jaali?
I'm 22.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So pretty great. I wasn't owning my own business at 22.
Yeah, me either. And thank goodness for that. I barely own my business at 39. 22, being in business. What was that process like going with your parents? I think it should be noted are also Main Street entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of a tradition of this in your
Yep.
family. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you ever get done with the day at the shop and they're done with the day at the shop? You go home and man, oh man, do you ever have conversations around owning your own business or that entrepreneurial piece? Does that work into your home life or your daily life?
Well, yes. I mean, we talk about how, just the general day on Main Street went, because we're on different blocks and sometimes there's more traffic in one area compared to the other. So that's always interesting. But really it's just kind of checking in,
Sure.
I mean, I wouldn't have, if not for my parents having a small business, I think it would be a lot hard. It would have been a lot harder for me to start my own, just because they know my dad, he just knew all the steps to go. And then my mom is like, here's what we're going to do with the shop. She had the vision and everything. And my dad handled the, paperwork, the boring stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure Ted would love to know that he handles the boring stuff.
Well, the important stuff.
The pragmatic stuff. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so on that same vein, doing that piece where you have the pragmatism and then you have this artistic creative side. Can you talk to us a little bit about, how do you balance that in the day to day for an entrepreneur who might be considering going into a creative based business or an artistic based business? What are some of the challenges, the pragmatic stuff that you had to do first in order to make the vision of creation come to life?
Well, if you don't have some sort of a vision of just how, if you don't know exactly what you want to sell or some sort of a direction to go in, then it, chances are it'll probably fizzle out or you'll lose interest. But for me, because I'd already been selling my dolls for 8, 9 years, it was really easy for me, it's just going to be my doll shop. Jollies, Dollies. I'm going to make all the dolls, and then because I couldn't or I guess for like a retail shop or gift shop, my parents were saying you should have stickers or cards, other things that you can have more of that you don't have. So you're not just working so hard all the time to like keep up. Mm-hmm. Just so that there's other things, smaller things, little gifty items. And so I probably wouldn't have thought of that right away. So it's important to think of other things that you can do. So if you don't want to have other people's things or, things that you buy wholesale or something, just think of other ways that you can use your creativity, but in a way that you don't have to like think about it for a while, so you can draw the card designs, but then you make a bunch and you have them and you don't have to think about, getting a bunch more until if they've all run out. And so that's like something definitely to think about. And I still struggle with that because I'm always just like thinking of the next doll to make, but I can make cards and have those, and that's something that's just always on the shelves. I can have stickers and smaller things that, just are easy to crank out. I don't have to think about it after I, it's to send the design off to get made into a sticker. I don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah, that's really smart because it sounds like it maximizes your time and promotes efficiency.
Yeah.
For yourself, for sure. And I think on that level, like, it goes a little bit farther into like the marketing and sales strategy. I mean, I follow you on social media and I see you like popping up at Comic-Cons. Right?
That's a new thing.
Yeah, right? But you like past couple of years, you go out and there's a market there. I'm sure that you see a lot of things that you inevitably end up bringing back into your stable. Talk a little bit about that. What's it like to go to some of these larger entities with your dolls that you're creating in a small town in the Midwest and push that light forward?
It's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, last year was really the first year that last year was my first year as I had a tent at the Driftless Art Festival. That was my first year, but I'd been to it. Mm-hmm. And then also my first time as a vendor at a convention, and not just like a small convention. Like I went to Anaheim, the Anaheim Convention Center, and there were like 3,000 booths there. It was insane.
I bet.
But it was an experience, and I'm already going to do it again this year.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm. So just seeing different artists and everybody who came to the event is there to support the artist, Mm-hmm. It was just really cool to see such a variety. I didn't see a whole lot of felting conventions. It's kind of a lot of people design a plush and then they'll have it mass produced, which is something I've thought about, but I haven't really looked into too much. And designer toys made out of like resin or plastic. Mm-hmm. That's very popular at conventions. And so I've done a little bit of that. And definitely leaving the convention gives me all these ideas and for new things to try, which is my favorite part.
Sweet. Yeah. I do know that, in our house, we have a revered.
Is it a whale?
It is. Its name is
Whaley McBubble.
It's just Whaley. That's and Whaley, for my 6-year-old, is the guardian of the night. Literally in the bed, like Silas will not go to sleep without Whaley in there because Whaley keeps like the bad dreams away. He believes that with his whole heart. So I don't know what you're doing.
That makes me so happy.
But it's a thing. Like if we can't find Whaley, good luck getting him to stay in bed because it's going to be bananas. So yeah, maybe just have a couple backups of those. But talking about that, like, did you have toys as a kid?
Oh yeah,
that were like you were inseparable from. Like how do you? I mean,
I still have stuffed animals. I'll still go and buy stuffed animals.
Nice.
And then it's like, people will ask me, "Oh, do you ever just make something for yourself?" And no, I really don't.
Yeah.
I think maybe, I think I have one thing that I made, and we were going on a family road trip. And so I wanted to make something that I could take pictures of in the different locations we were at. But otherwise,
My daughter does that.
my staff actually got me a Barbie doll this year of me. So when I can't be in the cafe, they can take it around and do. And Nora actually said that she was going to take it to the Main Street conference.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And she's like, "Here's Luke."
No, well,
Yes.
we can't talk about why I'm taking it right now, but this podcast is receiving some accolades at an event.
Oh, cool.
And Luke can't be there, so I'm just gonna take pictures with the Barbie.
Yeah,
Perfect.
right.
Yeah.
And he does hold a smile better than I do, but I know that feeling. You want that thing to take away because it's fun, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you get
Yeah.
a lot of social media traffic.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that is like part of your marketing strategy? That social media stuff.
I still don't understand the whole social media thing.
That's the most unmillennial thing you could have said. Like I don't actually.
Yeah,
understand.
exactly. That's pretty funny.
I mean, I think I've pretty much got my social media bases covered.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it's easier to just share to other social media pages through one or the other, which is nice. But it's still, I don't know how people have so many followers, what their strategy is. I'm just kind of looking at what people are doing, and just trying to come up with.
Well, there are actually ways that you can buy followers.
I know, and I don't want to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's...
Yeah, it's not very pure, but it does
That's my
exist.
job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a way, there is a way to do that.
Oh, yeah, and I've seen that. 'Cause
I think one of the
love
things
me.
that's so charming about your marketing strategy is that it also ties into education. And so I think that's an important thing to talk about is how your classes create visibility and also an understanding of the art that you're doing. And also the difficulty of doing the work that you do, because it's not easy. I have sat at some early parenthood classes at the Waldorf school and tried to felt things. It's very satisfying to
It's
constantly
very
poke that
satisfying.
piece of.
it's
However,
very satisfying.
mine didn't look like anything. Everybody else's looked really nice, and here's my ball of stuff at the end.
Was your
but-
ball of stuff a human? Because I can see you like stab.
Stop.
Just
That is always like the...
It is. I mean, would you say it's satisfying?
Oh, it's so satisfying. And that's always the first thing people say when they start, when I start the class, they're like, oh, wow, this is so satisfying.
Right.
And then followed by, I could see myself doing this when I'm angry. Like that is always the second thing people say.
where the best art comes from, isn't it?
Passion.
Right, yeah. But I can't make anything if I'm angry, because then that energy goes into the
No,
doll.
they're too
And-
sweet and beautiful. How many people do you have in these classes, and what are the age ranges that they tend to attract?
All ages, really. The youngest is 8, just because it's, usually the kids have a little bit of an understanding around art projects.
Sharp
more.
objects.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And if someone younger wants to attend, then I will ask that their parent just accompany them. But, excuse me.
Oh, you're all good.
That's
You can
okay.
cough right into the mic.
No.
Our listeners support. That cough has been brought to you by the Viroqua Chamber Main Street, proud supporters of the 54665 podcast, the USDA Rural Development Grant, and of course, your hosts, Luke Zahm and Nora Roughen-Schmidt. Now we're back with Jaali.
Nice.
Yeah, that was great. That was beautiful. Brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I get a big age range of people in the class, which is really nice. Because I love anyone who just wants to come and make an animal with me.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so many classes that I offer because either I don't want to, I can't give out all my secrets.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's only so many things that I can teach someone in an hour and a half, Like I can make a penguin in an hour and 15 minutes because I've made so many now. But there's only so many classes I can teach so that people can leave with a finished thing.
Right.
How much would it cost to commission you to make a flock of penguins over a 24-hour period? Like as many as you could do if it takes an hour and 25 minutes. So theoretically, you could walk away.
Are you purchasing this?
I don't know. It's an idea.
Okay.
I
Like a 24-hour.
The other day, I was
felting
like,
session.
I'm going to do a Harry Potter marathon.
Sweet.
And see how many penguins. Like I actually said this to someone. I was like, I'm going to see how many penguins I can make in the amount of time it takes to watch all 8 Harry Potter movies.
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I just watched all the Harry Potters last. If you had to pick a house, which house?
I'm Slytherin.
You're Slytherin?
I am.
I like that.
I am.
A little bit of darkness. That's pretty amazing, and I think that's a good idea. If we ever get this thing together, like a maker space, the 24
be
hours.
super
Like I'll feed you. Nora can do like live stream while
I
we're
get
there.
to do the live
You get to
stream
do the
part.
live stream, and like we'll individually name the penguins as they pop off the
See
line.
how many
and-
penguins I can make in 24 hours.
That'd be kind of fun.
I
Right?
would honestly, if I'm preparing for a show or something, like sleep is not a
Right.
Right?
sleep just leaves for
Sleep
a while.
leaves.
You know, it's like I'll come back in a little while.
I feel like that most of my life, actually.
Yeah.
Sleep leaves.
Yeah, I do too, man.
But that definitely would be a fun challenge
Right?
to see
Yeah.
how many penguins I could do in 24 hours.
And I bet you by like hour 22, we could pack the place with people cheering you on those last two hours. Like, Jaali. And maybe like that last penguin, like it's got a third eye or something weird's going on, like the genetic mutation. It's like, I don't
Is
even
Jaali
care.
allowed to sleep during this?
No, it's like a
No,
24-hour
it's 24
marathon.
I
It's
can
like,
easily stay up for 24 hours.
it's like
okay.
you go, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember being 22? Was it that long ago?
Yes, it was.
Oh my gosh. For the listeners at home, I just got the side eyes hard. I just want you to know. That's a real thing.
So we're gonna segue out of this.
Oh, you want to segue out? Because I had a
Yes.
question.
Well, I have a question.
Go.
too.
Your questions are more important than mine.
No, they're not.
For the listeners at home, they are more important.
So I'm interested in what your daily schedule is like as a young entrepreneur when you are not doing a marathon of penguins for 24 hours. So for people that are thinking about starting a business and they're young and they're fresh out of college or they're not going to college, whatever it may be, what does it look like to be a young entrepreneur? What's your day like?
I would say don't do what I do. Because I mean, if you like to sleep in, that's totally fine. I love to sleep in. And I stay up really late.
Okay.
I don't have much of a social life. I just pretty much spend my time, if I'm not at the shop making stuff, I'm home making stuff. And it's just what I feel comfortable doing. But I think it's important to have a social life and balance that out. And, I mean, I would say try to come up with some sort of a schedule that's easy enough for you to get into the rhythm of following. You know, maybe that's just 2 hours a day I'm going to sit and draw, or 2 hours a day I'm going to sit and do something, and then just ease into that, you know, and come up with a schedule, figure out what works for you, because if you have other things in your day, you know, but it's important, I think, if you're going to start some like an artistic career, to have some sort of a rhythm, because I think it's easy to just kind of set that aside. You know, I mean, life gets in the way, but if you really are passionate about art, I think it's important to make sure to have the time in the day to do what you love. And for me, that's all day.
Sure, that's awesome. So one of the questions that I have, because you know, the chef life, I have a balance, and I think like people who refer to chefs as artists, like there are some out there that are art, you know, are unabashedly artists. They don't concern themselves with the day-to-day of like making sure that the restaurant is financially solvent. They have people paying for things that, you know, make them able to just focus on what they do, and that's find the pure expression of communication or feeling through food. How much, because for me, I definitely consider cooking to be a craft, right?
Yeah.
It's this amalgamation between business and art. How much has your perspective on your creative process changed since you it's a business for you. You know, does that change the way you look at it?
I would say yes. Because there are some dolls that I like to make that I can't just crank out. You know, they take me hours or days even. But having a shop, I need to be able to fill the shelves. And so sometimes I have to put the more artistic dolls away for a while so that I can just make sure that the shelves are stocked. And that is hard for me because I really like spending a lot of time on one thing. But it's important to, if you've got a shop, to make sure that it's filled because you want people to come in and not go, ooh, looking a little bare.
That was a really good Wisconsin accent, I guess.
Oh, thanks.
Jeez, it's a little bare in here.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's totally true.
But this year I started the very first, my New Year's resolution was to make one doll every day for the whole year. And so far I have not missed a day.
Sweet.
So today's the 8th. So I will be on my 67th doll or something. I can't, something like that. And so I have filled the shelves nicely. Awesome. And sometimes the doll that I make, and for me, this challenge, I guess, this resolution, the reason I'm doing it is because I spend a lot of time, like I'll spend a day cutting out a whole bunch of sharks or whales, you know, and then take another day to sew them all, and then another day to stuff and finish them. And it's really easy if suddenly this creature pops into my head that I just have to make. I'll put everything else away, and then I'll just accumulate all these unfinished things. And so I have a big trash bag of like things that I've cut out.
Awesome.
They're like, finish me, please.
Yeah, that's like all of my knitting projects over the last like 7 years.
Yeah. So my resolution is to, you know, it's not just to make something from start to finish. It's also to just finish something every day. So I'm slowly going through this trash bag of the stuff that I've cut out and just finishing them all. So by the end of the year, I won't have anything that is unfinished, you know.
Good for you.
So it's been challenging because there are definitely things that I would rather make. Yeah. But I'm sticking with it. And hopefully by the end of the year, I will have made 365 dolls.
That's great.
At least.
So
that's
cool.
Great. You know, one of the things that you actually just talked about there is something that I try and drill into young chefs. And there's this idea of economy of motion, right? Instead of cutting, sewing, stuffing one piece, there is something that you develop as a professional, which is a system, a process, right?
Yeah.
So you cut the patterns for the whales or the sharks, and then the next day, maybe you sew it, maybe you stuff it. You know, all those pieces lend you to be able to do your craft at a level that allows you to make enough to sell it.
Yeah.
Which I think is super important. You know, it's not just about going start to finish all the time on one piece. You got to give yourself a little bit of grace in that. Jaali, I can't help but sit here and wonder if you could look into a crystal ball 10 years from now.
Ooh.
Right? What would you like to see for Viroqua?
For Viroqua?
Yeah.
I would like to see, 10 years from now.
Right.
I'd like to see some sort of space for makers. I've seen these around when we were traveling last year, my family and I, like a maker space with a bunch of different spaces, like stations, I guess, in the building or whatever. You know, I think there might actually be one in Madison. There's like sewing machines, a place for screen printing or wood carving, just like a space where people can come together and do craft, because I think that art brings people together. And it's just you come to a space and you're making art, and everybody else is coming to the space and making art, and that generates conversations and just general fun times to be had. And I think that could be really important, especially because we're such a nice kind of small town. I think that could be pretty beneficial.
Would you like to see Viroqua grow or stay the same size?
Ooh. I do like the small town feel of Viroqua, but, if it's going to grow, it's going to grow.
Right. A little bit hands off on that one. We don't have much control over that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We're trying, though.
One step at a time.
Nora, if you had a crystal ball in 10 years.
I'm feeling very put on the spot here.
Well, that's good.
Oh, I just answered the question.
Yeah. If you had a crystal ball 10 years down the road, what would you like to see for Viroqua? This is one of those questions that I think is out there. And I think a lot of the listeners would probably wonder, why? Why do we keep having these conversations? Why do we keep bringing, wonderfully fascinating people like Jaali into the studio to talk about why they do what they do?
Well, I'm interested in smart growth for Viroqua. So that means more placemaking, more opportunities, whether it's maker spaces, more opportunities for housing, more green space, more opportunities for entrepreneurs to test out ideas. I want Viroqua to be a place that's attractive to young people and also to retirees, because statistically what we're seeing in economic development is showing that young people and retirees want the same things. They want amenities, they want walkable downtowns,
Sounds about right.
They want nice looking things, they want plenty of access to entertainment and to the arts, they want good quality schools, they want hospitals nearby and in walking distance. And Viroqua has so many of those elements already. So I think if we can continue to put resources into supporting entrepreneurs and the people that live here, especially building up young people and making sure that they know that they're supported, and continuing to beautify and protect our downtown, because when downtown does better, everyone does better.
For sure.
It's statistically proven. At this point, we're running out of room in the downtown. So expanding the footprint and also not being afraid to grow up. Sometimes you have to grow up. So, and that means...
Are you talking about me specifically?
Yes, you need to.
I'm
grow
talking about
up.
expanding housing, but if you want to make that into something else, you can.
My Peter Pan fantasies.
So, I want to see all of those things. So support for the arts, support for people that live here, high quality of life, continued access to amazing food, supporting organic farming. There are all kinds of amazing things that we already do here that, should those things be enhanced or funded just a little bit better, Viroqua is going to be unstoppable.
That's right. It's like that song by Jefferson Starship. Nothing's going to stop us now. And if this world runs out of lovers,
I think it's funny.
We'll still have each other, because nothing's going to stop us now. Oh, you've been listening to the 54665, all things real economic development, all things Viroqua.
I think you should have just been singing that instead.
And if this world runs out of lovers, we'll still have each other. Nothing's gonna stop us now. Nothing's gonna stop us. Ooh.